naszym osiedlu, naszej ulicy, bo chcemy naszych niezbywalnych praw i wolności, bo nie oddamy naszych marzeń. Nadchodzi punkt zwrotny.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the final panel today. A panel that we are going to devote to the region of dreams. A couple of words why. A moment ago we finished the panel of the first part of the book Let's Agree in Poland, a great project achieved by the Social Contract Incubator, a project that is a turning point of a kind. But I want to address another turning point that I've just listened carefully, the words read by Marek Kondrat in the short clip introducing the turning point. He speaks, "We will not give up our dreams." And our conversation is a bit about our dreams, the dreams and how we turn them into reality, how we build our life plans on them together with others on our own, but first of all, how we build them in narration. Because you can design a region, but you need to do something with it. Something practical, something that will be more than just political, social and economical dimension measured by scientists, but something that can be translated into the language for people, that we can imagine how we are going to work with this region, what it's going to look like. I'm delighted that we have the following guests. Karolina Lewestam, Professor Sylwia Sysko-Romańczuk, Ziemowit Szczerek, Jarosław Gwizdak, Leszek Stypułkowski, and Professor Artur Wołek. I've read all of you in books. I've met some of you in person, but I would like to start from something different. When I emailed you before the games, I didn't tell everything to you. We agreed with Karolina for the very beginning to tell a story you created, Ziemowit created. These are the moments when you explain difficult things into the language where we can imagine what it's going to be like. And it's not just the language that gives us numbers, but where we can see it can be our daily life. And our question is about imagination, how literature, because it's very much present in this book, I didn't say, each region of dreams has their own authors on the part of the incubator, researchers and incubator writers who put that into the narrative of fiction. How literature can talk to politics, how literature can make politics imaginable, real, but also it's not so strange. And we may say, okay, it can be done. Well, theoretically, that seems to be a magnificent task. Only narrative, a story can bring that to us, that we can understand that regions, in my case, designed by Wołek and nature, they would turn live if we put some story into it, a narrative. But it was the most difficult literary task I've ever had. And I even wrote a book for children. a romantic comedy. That was most difficult because there was no, well, every time that I read what I did, it sounded like a social realistic book. And she boarded the train, headed for Rzeszów, and the railroad was built by this and that politician. Because of that, they drank a lot. So I had this problem of fitting into the framework. You always write what you want, and here you need to write as others want you to. So it's extremely difficult, and that can be seen, and that you can find this risk of intersection of literature and politics when it serves it and not just pulls the policy, because politics is part of the writer's imagination. So we've got social realistic book. That is why I chose a bit of a science fiction form, because that seems the only literary form where we have a different world presented, and we need to fit into it. We need to bring to it some content. It was difficult to avoid this artificial sense. The details we were given as writers were extensive. Working on them was extremely deep. And now, come on, write it so it comes out naturally, all those institutions, etc. It wasn't easy. Ziemowit Szczerek, you've got the mic. How was it? Write this like that. I know what you mean. If we wanted to convert the task into the text, we would get a socialist, realist book, like we knew from our past. A woman getting onto the tractor. You made it as science fiction. I thought, well, perhaps I exaggerated with irony. I believe the heroes I created, no, they are in a form of theater, a comedy of absurd. They stand up, but they are sort of twin pigs. Palmer comes to the table, taps on it, clicks the fingers and speaks how in a progressive region education will have away from Czarnek. Quoting, and she said, thanks to the agency, all the people in the Pomorskie region have a choice, buy a flat or have stable rent. There was no other option. All right. You got a package of information. What should be in a region? I'll be back to you with questions, but I want to ask you, you who invented the regions in technical details before they got some spirit. Later on, they got spirit and body. But from you, they got the bone system filled with muscles that were supposed to, waiting for the spirit to be inhaled into them. We have progressive regions. We had Helena Chmielewska-Szlajwel, who is the author of that region with Ziemowit Szczerek. There is a conservative region, left-wing Christian democratic, liberal. Well, let's start with Sylwia. What it's like with your region, Professor? What is it like? What was most important in it for you? And what was critical for you to show, to grasp in it? Well, let me first say that we had it a bit different. Marta Kwaśnicka, who cooperated with us when writing the narrative, made a literary editorial, and Jakub Druszcz invented the story, the plot, so we wrote it a bit differently. And the skeleton you speak of, it wasn't there. We didn't get a skeleton. We built it. Each group worked with a researcher. We had an assistant, and Magda, one of the heroines, because we've got a couple, Magda and Piotr, in our chapter. It's a real person. This is the person who helped us to gather information about the region, Podlaskie, which, as any other region, will have its history, topography, will have its population, values, and so on and so forth. We wanted to break away from that history, though the problem was that chapters were supposed to be authentic. The authors were writing those, and the writers were supposed to identify with the values. It's not my whole life, but these are values we actually share. Let me disclose something. During our work with Marta Kwaśnicka, it turned out that her vision of conservatism was a bit different from what we present in the chapter. But I'm grateful to her that she decided to collaborate with us, and the same could be said about all other chapters. It's sort of emanation of key values. I wouldn't say getting down to the chapter, we didn't name them, although we argued they will be model regions, but we said no. And we learned that the Conservative Party is not uniform either. The Progressive Party is not uniform in its models, thinking models. So we started to think what is authentic. Dreams are. Because everybody can dream, and nobody can say the dreams are bad or good. The key feature of dreams is that they are authentic. And what is our region like? Our conservative region is based on family as value. When you read the chapters, you will see that each of them has its own subject, and it is the representation of values. We have family. We have a married couple, Magda and Wojtek, with 3 children. Magda is an entrepreneur's woman from a family that has its family history based on land and work. And family, multi-generation family, because the family meets, is headed for Christmas, that where 4 generations of Podlasie people meet, celebrate. The key values include family as the community of people where foundation for vitality and continuity is Christian belief and tradition, which doesn't mean lack of assimilation or modern approach, because all solutions chosen and proposed in a chapter, they are implemented in public policies as solutions that are supposed to support the value meant as family, as a community of people. You can argue with that. You may say that in other regions there are different values, but we are trying these policies to support the essence of a given viewpoint, and the viewpoint will have its differences, and we wanted to root those in 5 traditions that we reflect in 5 chapters of the Regions of Dreams. So from the conservative region, I will jump to the Christian democracy region. Professor Wołek is grabbing the mic. What it's like, this Christian democracy region, from conservatives to Christian Democrats, that jump. You need to explain this and that. That's pretty simple. There are no Christian Democrats. There've never been, there never will be. Thanks to Karolina, we got sort of oniric, dreamlike framework. But we started from public policies. What can be shared? So there is a dream, one dream there. It's a dream of peace. Not peace understood. If you attended the first day, Professor McCluskey quoted St. Paul 3 times. I can do the same. Peace as a basic link between those who can disagree. So it's more than no war. It's a positive relation between people who, apart from that, are pretty different. And we were trying to look for such public policies that would bring together, and they are different. There are various concepts. It's not a full consent. We speak about the Podkarpackie region, and the policy is supposed to be based on close cooperation with Ukraine. Indeed, there is a huge group of politicians who build their career based on anti-Ukrainian attitude. If you have a look at the first politician on the Konfederacja party list, you will understand what I mean. But peace was something that I and Łukasz Rozdejczyk, the co-author, was looking for an answer to the question. Peace is gone. It's the prerequisite for the existence of any Christian democracy, but the electorate will not go away. This is something I miss so much in the conversation I had here, very inspiring, but with this unrealistic assumption that the victory of the opposition will mean not only the destruction of those monsters ruling us, but that those who voted for them would vanish. They won't. And we were trying to find a policy that would put together those who vote for peace and will vote for alike parties in the profile, but we wanted to give them better leaders. Thanks to Karolina, we managed to do so.
And we are speaking about what Leszek Stypułkowski initially indicated. We've lost those who got off the modernization tram at the independence and nationalism well-being stop. Not really. It's not like that. Do you believe that people in Podkarpacie do not want to live in modern Poland? That their cost is so high that they do not want to have a good school? Good school not in the sense that it's got a gym and a swimming pool, but the one that teaches very well. They've got the teacher of physics and sciences, not a PE teacher. Physical education quite similar. What they teach decent English. This modernization way, there's one way. Good school is the school without religious teaching but with sexual education. Quite possible, but this is not the package. We wanted to unpackage it. Unpackage our thinking about modernity and to show that there are different ways to modernity. People who vote PIS in Podkarpacie, 60+% in the last election, are not the same people like us. They have different values at times, but in this good policy expectations dimension, we can be in line with them. Let me stop here. I'd like to return to speaking. I hope we'll return. The Freedom Games quotations are different. I quoted John Paul II in the presence of Magda Środa. Jarek. Your region of your dreams. When you're looking at the book and the regions that we have, which is the closest to your heart, the values, the story, where do you find your bearings? I knew it would be most difficult. Let me start with the questions. Thank you very much for the possibility of being here. I never thought I would be a part of the games, forget Freedom Games. An instruction how to write a best-selling book, 28 co-authored. Each of them buys 5 copies to give to their families, and we are second best in the rankings, just after by of President Kwaśniewski. My dreams come true. So you're not first? No, we are not first. Referring to the founding father said, founding father of Freedom Games, we were learning how to die for the family, and we are still learning how to live in the country we are in. This book was work with 28 people that I had similar ideas. I saw one of the co-authors in the government television and I disagreed with what he said, but the chapter that he wrote, I would subscribe to what he wrote. This is chapter 5. Why is it difficult? Because I'll tell you about the region, Silesian region. So, well, it's difficult to take the floor in this moment. So, your dream. My dream is coming true. I've been doing this for 49 years. The Barbie of our association, Helena, said, if there is the day after the election, and when our idea comes true, nothing would change. This is the starting point. People from Silesia region should be convinced to that. Nothing will change for the time being. We are not speaking about abstract things. We are speaking about 4.4 million people. It's like Croatia, or Lithuania plus Estonia. And we are dreaming. So what are we dreaming about? We want to have a good school. We want to have social consent present there. We'd like to have... Well, I wouldn't like to follow the stereotypes of Silesia, ethos and leftish attitude, Beskid spirit, because Śląsk Cieszyński is a different thing. It works. Not to the scale of 4 millions, but we've got a prototype, Upper Silesia Metropolis. There is union of communes like transport, that was a starting point. But it's happening. A metropolis is a lab for a region according to her book stories. It starts dealing with public policies, starts thinking what to do with seniors, starts thinking about identity, story, narrative. We know that. It's a livable place. I'd like to live there because I like living in Katowice, and assets like very good universities, plus additional story, magic of Silesia region. If I want to say something about my Upper Silesia, there are 3 films whose titles are not coincidence. Angeles, the God and Gods. It may not be a quintessence, in ideal sense, but I agree. Leszek Stypułkowski, the liberals. We were squabbling about this, but liberals. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, good evenings. I'm very happy to tell you about our liberal voivodeship, liberal region. It was a great adventure to work with so many people with different ideas, to see literates who instill life into mechanisms of operation, open our eyes and make us enjoy what we do. Our liberal region was supposed to be the one that understands the idea of freedom. We do not interfere how people live. We want them to be responsible. Me, Marek Tatawa, Marek Zieliński, we wanted this region to be flat and lean state that gives great public services for money you can count. Public services that we agree on, that we accept in a referendum, well apprised, clear apprising, and any company may realize it, so there are no monopolies, not that we cannot choose. So we choose a school, health services, service providers like waste companies. It's based on rankings. We know what costs what. We know how they are assessed in public services rankings when it comes to services providers. So we've got the idea. We created the mechanism, but who is supposed to do that? And here is Piotr Siemian, who came up with 3 wonderful women who give up on career in corporations. They become deputy governors, and they are fully enthusiastic. You can feel it, how joyful they are to see the change. They introduce reforms. They modify the voivodeship card, the basic constitution, and we've got 3 people. We give up on silos that divide the province into budget sectors. We've got Aldona that does away with competitiveness barriers, so that we have the greatest possible number of market players to provide best public services. We've got Wanda, who is Deputy Governor for Human Resources, and she's there to have the administration team working for good money in excellent conditions, and they use the best possible technological solutions. We know how many places we need to have in kindergarten, medical procedures. We can apprise it. We can ask our citizens whether they are ready to pay for this, because this liberal region is where citizens know is that they pay for what they get through their taxes. So every public service is up. There's a pricing. So if there's a support, and we want to support all those who are less fortunate, we know that these are the taxes that are earmarked for support. Wielkopolska region supports it. And Stacy, she streamlines the questions of the laws and the companies that used to be state-owned. They belong to the treasury that we inherited. As you learn, one of the ideas is to have local government having the assets in a liberal region. So whatever is not needed that can earn on its own is privatized. There's the assets fund that invests into development, into innovative ideas. And all these ideas are carried out by the people that Piotr Siemian described so well. They become living creatures, the leaders of change. It was a wonderful combination of our dreams with literary work. Let me return to Ziemowit and the literary work. I'm looking at Helena, who was called to answer. I can't help smiling. How much, when you think about this region, can it happen? What is so true in this region that is transferred from the story to real life? Not only the one that boils down to one region. As I'm listening, Leszek Stypułkowski says that regions will be similar. So what do we get in the world from this? I'd like to say that Siemion wrote me, he was scared when he was creating this chapter, but he pulled that through. I like the idea of decentralization of Poland so that every region has got far-reaching competences so that they have pragmatic approach to their operation. We cannot remove this conservative aspect, but this should be civilized. Any civilization way is more than wanted. Civilization in this context rings negative bells, but okay. It's an attempt to return to thinking about politics as something pragmatic and more sublime, on the other hand, compared to what we observe at the moment, which is a short-sighted, short-term struggle that has nothing to do with the public debate. Yeah, they keep the other party's balls. Yeah. Or some other parts of the body if you are tall enough to jump up. So it opens the window so clean air and things. It's important to remind that, because gosh, at some point I realized that I forgot about it, that I no longer believed in that. So let me leave that to experts to think what may happen, to what extent. Let me tell you that whilst I was reading the book, I learned why we have this, why we are building the Republic of Poland. Is this going to be a sponge that takes in all the negative emotions, or is this an institution that has been created to comply with these or rather needs, to fulfill their needs, based on pragmatism, like a good school that we mentioned? A good school is the touch point between us and conservative people. Great number of people in my family come from Podkarpacie region. Galicia was created, so I know the reality is there, how demonized it is in this leftist and liberal perspective. It's more about this. So it's a kind of proposition, so to say, that will be implemented, not in this concrete form proposed here, but I've got the feeling that this is not necessarily all about this. It was about imagination and finding key to people's minds and return to this. We got stuck in our disputes. We were discussing what shouldn't be lost by citizens when those in power change. The first question goes to Sylwia. What did you learn from one another when carrying out the project? Each of us will reach out for the book, will do the reading, will learn about regions, what they look like in detail. But this is a great lesson from the incubator, what you've learned from one another whilst working on this. And punchline. Thank you very much for this question. You know that this is an offspring of our discussion. Katowice, June, I was talking to Magda, it was evening. We were walking around the city after a debate. We were speaking about thinking. It was amazing, because positive thinking based on liking other people, on interest to other people, is foreign to us at the moment. This party has got freedom games, other have got solidarity games, two key notions and two key values for each pole have become apart. There is a gulf between one and the other. And I like Professor Calypso's chapter. I understand her language. It's literature in science, so to speak, that I highly value. She speaks about the network. There is no chance to bridge the gulf today, to have flyovers. We can have just interim footwalks, footbridges, like the meeting. And I'm honored to be a part of the Forum of the Ideas, where ideas that I present will revive the other party too. The footbridges that we'll be designing are the footbridges of experiences of intellectuals that are happening in front of our eyes. What have we learned? Let me speak about the results, and I'll tell you what I learned. I learned civic friendship, and this is something that has inspired me always. When I read Alderstein MacIntyre, a philosopher that I value very high, he is an American of Scottish origin, Scottish provenance. Is there a chance to realize a project to instill this in life? Idea of friendship, where friendship is more important than discourses. A discourse is important, but friendship is valued highly. He said nicely about peace. Friendship can be built despite our arguments, but this is peace-based. I cannot feel unsecure without peace. This might be a difficult conversation, but it does not deprive us of peace. So I learned about friendship, about talking, about differences. The problem with differences is that we have always been told that differences are bad. and you need to find what is common. And when we look at etymology of common, communion from Latin, what happens? Communion has got two ends, but we started translating this work as communal or unified. When you look at other ones, other translation from the communal translation, we look at the stem of the work, mun, kom, onio, two word sources. The first is moenia, situa, so fencing of unity, and munis is a gift, a task. So giving something to one another. Communion is not a state but a process.
It's a beautiful process indeed, but I'm thinking about civic friendship. I'm back to our conversation. What Jarosław Gwizdak has learned. I started to talk about it, that I learned when I was here yesterday, and he has a broader view. I was trying to get this broader view, but I understood that, for instance, our rule of law group is a bubble, but observing bubbles by bubbles, what we think of each other, without a dialogue possibility, without verification. I also learned in my previous life I was a judge, and I believe that if I act per civil procedure rule, I will know what is not disputable, then I'll take care of what is disputable, and if I have evidence I can reach the truth. It may not be so. So I was learning, well, I will be persistently recommend the chapters on justice, and this is an opinion that we can say that whatever is happening is bad. It is for me 90%. But reaching to the reasons of such evil, which I spoke about it, I didn't understand it was in a novel. It could be read differently, it can be diagnosed differently, and that allowed me to learn and understand, not to say the other party, but I do not want to say others. I miss the word. Others is okay, but others means ours. This and those, to be fair. This is something I learned. Apart from that, it's when I was traveling here by train, I read the book again, and I found, wow, and that's lots of nice stories. It can be valuable. I could live in one, second, third region. That's what I learned. You've got lots of travels. Artur Wołek, what did you learn? Apart from reminding that there is no Christian Democrats, well, we've heard the most important elements. I don't know if I have learned it, but details are important. That's confirmed. There are no two tribes. There are so many groups that are different, and they interleave. On a daily basis, we live in our social and informative bubbles, but they again overlap. And if we move to details, we understand each other pretty well. So if I should draw any lesson from the creative process, it's not it worth talking, but that it's not worth to talk on this general level. It may end up with punching each other when we speak of particular solutions, and we assume we want to reach an agreement. It's far easier than you could expect it. We are very much optimistic. Leszek Stypułkowski would be an optimist, as I assume, but Leszek? I liked what Sylwia said about civic friendship. When I was listening to today's lectures, I heard a lot about critical thinking. I always assumed critical thinking that somebody was telling me a story, I would find weak points in it. I was highly critical about it. Here, I learned a total different vector of critical thinking. I was looking for good elements, what would be important for my new friendly citizen. And I learned that this consent and patriotism is not in persuading conservatives to turn into liberals, as discussed today. It will do if we acknowledge we are different, that we want to live different lives, that we practice different values, and in that spirit of patriotism, give as much space for it as possible. It was a moving experience for me indeed. Again, I feel great optimism in our discussion, and that makes me happy, as we are. These are things I often hear from my students who come from very different places, towns, represent different views, come from families that are not intellectuals. They are regular kids who come for such things, look for such things, and they say, you only see the word black and white, you only see enemies, you don't see friends. Perhaps it's easier for them somehow to build. Back to the beginning. The bubbles on the one hand, from which we observe each other. Perhaps we don't need to only look at each other. You know that scientists are but to discuss. We have 130, and they managed to get the common line. But then building footbridges that are built by stories, by conversation, but which literature can put in narration. Yes, what you mentioned, that details matter. There is no story without details, and the details are well as documented by research. Each time when we have a moral dilemma to decide on, the more details are provided, the more likely we are expected not to treat a dilemma in a utilitarian way. This tram problem, what does it look like, who's inside, and across whom it is going to run? We start thinking the ontological categories. The bridge, the footpaths, the bridges. I'm full of admiration for the project because it is a reasonable way to use pluralism in a friendly perspective, without alienation. I need to confess that it is my fault you are here, because Anna Wojciuk, who is the founding mother of the project, came to me with the question, whom would you see here to do things like that, to write it? I said, run to Szczerek. We don't know each other personally, but I follow your various activities. And Ziemowit seems to be a unique person sitting in that liberal bubble, both legs in it. At the same time, he sees and understands problems with not seeing the other person, being close to your own view. So I'm happy we're in the same book. I trust I have it like that. Well, I'm very happy. Leftist liberal bubble would be mine. If I may, about the bridges, civic friendship, and respective others' view. Obviously, even if we don't want to, there is no other option. This book is a sort of demand of a certain way of speaking of your views other than the one we have today. It's like Fukuyama, when American Western technocrats could get in touch and understand with Soviet technocrats. So this is a clear appeal to get back to the pragmatic arrangement for Poland. And this new social agreement we need so much on different levels. 4 minutes left, ladies and gentlemen. A question, perhaps 2 questions from the audience. Anybody willing? Leszek Stypułkowski, obviously. That would be my first question during this freedom games. Thank you for being here. We couldn't fit in all the authors. I like your uniformity so much. It's pretty friendly here. I remember the song by Elektryczne Gitary. Everybody agrees with each other, and it's going to stay the way it is. I want to ask you, don't you think that a risk of division, according to this line, that conservatives go to Podkarpacie, liberals take the Mazowiecki region? I'm from Łódź, and I feel it, that all the divisions in Warsaw, the fights, the bubbles, this would be transferred to the level where it is absent today. On those levels, different problems are solved. I wouldn't like it to happen. As a man out of Warsaw, well, I'm happy with Warsaw where it is. I don't need it here. Aren't you afraid of politicization that leads to dangerous phenomena in terms of coherence and pragmatism, you think? Political scientist. I don't know about Łódź, but it has happened. It has arrived. And sometimes it protects us. We are protected from Warsaw stupidity by local oligarchs who do not want the interests to be disrupted. I have one particular city in mind, but normally it is here. This conflict will not allow solve development problems where one party is not dominating. The advantage of our project is that we are showing people who are dominated can find their place. In Podkarpacie, some conservative right-wing party will dominate. The same in Podlasie. In the west of Poland, no right-wing parties can win in a long perspective. Our project shows how people who are dominated can find their place. There are mechanisms that force cooperation in regional and national aspects. It will go apart, obviously, if they do not cooperate. You cannot run Twitter politics there, because there is a field to be worked on. 38 seconds for me. I wanted to take it. That's the goal of this exercise, that the political dispute is moved from the center down to regions, so that the center is strong with strategy, focusing on key aspects of the state security, national defense, environmental protection, energy system. We all agree on that. As a rule, it needs no political dispute, but moving political dispute down to regions will make individual regions working out different solutions. We'll have regulatory competition, which will result that some regions will find something so extra, others will follow. And if some region finds something bad, there is no risk that the whole Poland pays for it. The point is to move the political dispute down to regions. I've supplemented. We didn't talk about the third pillar of our project, the citizen. The whole project of creating a law goes in cooperation with citizens, and the dispersion of sources watching your hands and cooperation is something we believe can counteract all oligarchs. Leszek quoted a song. It's not like, do not move the capital city to Krakow, as the song goes. Let's move the things that can support the development of the city, of the region, and the community that lives there. Thank you very much for this excellent book. The whole incubator, you in particular, Karolina Lewestam. Thank you for being here. That was another sentence. My name is Magdalena Baran, and I want to encourage you to read the book and invite you to the final.
Jestem z zawodu lekarzem, zajmowałam się diagnostyką chorób nowotworowych.
W Białorusi zajmowałam się mikrobiologią i molekularną biologią.
Byłem nauczycielem szkoły podstawowej.
Naszym celem jest budowanie umiejętności, które są ważne na polskim rynku pracy.
Szybko nabierają takiej pewności siebie, bardzo szybko się uczą.
Wszystko możliwe, kiedy starasz się.
It's not always easy to recognize. It may look like this, or like this. It may be a burden, but it is a responsibility that we embrace nonetheless. But if it means this for one person and this for someone else, maybe it ultimately means being there for one another. It isn't handed to us, but we know where to find it. And how it feels, how it tastes, and what it sounds like when we finally have it. It means different things to different people, but for many, it means everything. And if we all fight for it, it will eventually bring us together.
Ihre Ausreise.
Każdy wybór ma swoje konsekwencje.
Dziś na kazaniu o takich jak ty mówili, że to morderczynie.
A wiesz, że ta, która ci pomogła, trafi za kraty?
Trzeba mieć sumienie.
Jak mogłaś to zrobić własnej matce?
Aborcja to najgorsza zbrodnia.
Gdybym ja podjęła taką decyzję, nie byłoby cię tutaj.
Organy państwa nie będą przyglądać się temu obojętnie.
Życie i zdrowie kobiety jest najważniejsze.
Stop kryminalizacji aborcji.
Kobieta decyduje.
Dzień dobry.
Dzień dobry. Pan Zbigniew Hołdys.
Zgadza się. Dla znajomych Zbyszek.
Serio? Zbyszek? Nadchodzące wybory są zbyt ważne, żeby zostawić je bez kontroli. Dołącz do obywatelskiej kontroli wyborów. Zróbmy wybory bez picu.